Up next in the broadcast, Korea's constitutional court rules to no longer consider adultery a crime on the grounds of a right to privacy and freedom to choose partners. However, cheating spouses will be subject to civil law. Over at the National Assembly on the second day of grilling government officials and the administration, the economy took center stage. 3 men are arrested in the United States, with one almost boarding a plane out of JFK on charges of conspiring to support and eventually join the militant group calling itself Islamic State. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to the program. You're watching Primetime News live from Seoul. I am Kang Chery.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We begin with a landmark court ruling. Korea's constitutional court says adultery is no longer a crime.
The law used to punish cheating husbands and wives with a maximum sentence of 2 years behind bars. Our Shin Se-min reports on what prompted the move against the decades-old law.
Having an affair will no longer be a criminal offense. That's the ruling issued by Korea's Constitutional Court on Thursday, following 4 previous appeals, the last being in 2008. It's based on the argument that the law infringes on an individual's right to privacy and that extramarital affairs should be regulated by civil law, not criminal law. The decision has raised a question of whether some 5,500 people charged with infidelity since 2008 will file for retrial or compensation. And one uncertainty that's been expressed is that affairs could become more prevalent.
Adultery is still illegal. It is still a civil case. The criminal court is leaving the matter to the parties directly involved.
The law had made marital infidelity a criminal offense punishable by up to 2 years in prison, but only a small percentage of those deemed guilty were actually jailed. And in recent years, enforcement of the law also waned as charges were often dropped. Kim Kwang-sam, a former Seoul district prosecutor, believes that abolishing the law was a move in the right direction that won't necessarily lead to a surge in extramarital affairs.
Other nations that have struck down anti-cheating laws, such as France or Germany, didn't experience a major social breakdown after decriminalizing adultery.
As the ruling largely reflects a rapidly changing Korea breaking away from the traditional conservative norms, experts say it was a necessary move for private freedoms. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
North Korea unilaterally decided to raise its workers' wages at the Inter-Korean Joint Industrial Complex in Kaesong starting next month. Seoul's Unification Ministry said Thursday that North Korea sent a letter to the industrial park 2 days ago saying that it's raised North Korean workers' minimum wage by 5% to $74. Opened back in 2004, the Kaesong Industrial Complex is a symbol of Inter-Korean economic cooperation, with North Korean workers producing goods at cheap labor cost with South Korea's capital and technology. Almost 1 in 3 people across the world now own a smartphone. U.S. researcher Strategy Analytics says the number of smartphone users exceeded 2 billion for the first time last year. That's 37% more than in 2013. Now the number is still rising, with more than 2.5 billion expected to be using the devices by the end of this year. And Korea is certainly contributing to this trend. Google says Korea's smartphone penetration rate is at 80%, coming in second only to Singapore in the world.
And with that many smartphones in the hands of pockets of consumers around the world, it's no wonder global tech giants are racing to develop their own mobile payment services. In particular, on the heels of the newly released Apple Pay, Google is expected to announce a new payment method called Android Pay this spring. Our Kim Ji-yeon has the story.
Gone are the days of paying for things with cash or plastic. Your smartphone will soon be able to pay for whatever you need. Google is reportedly to announce a new payment method called Android Pay in May to boost its Google Wallet platform. Android Pay is expected to allow users to upload their credit or debit card information to the app for single-tap transactions. Ars Technica reports this will make it easier for third-party apps to use the near-field communication chip that's installed on Android phones. This is Google's latest attempt to rival Apple Pay, launched last October, equipped with fingerprint verification technology. Instead of punching in a PIN number, users press the iPhone home button while placing the device on a reader. To develop a similar contactless payment method, Google acquired SoftCard, a mobile payment app jointly created by major U.S. wireless carriers, AT&T, Verizon Wireless, and T-Mobile USA. With the acquisition, Android phones sold by the three wireless carriers will pre-install the Google mobile payment system, starting later this year. And the U.S. search giant is expected to make the installation of the app mandatory for all Android phones sold in the U.S., and it's a move that's sure to annoy Samsung Electronics, which is pushing for its own mobile payment service. The Korean tech giant is to feature what's tentatively being called Samsung Pay on its upcoming Galaxy S6 smartphone next month. The company's vice chairman Lee Jae-yong met recently with Peter Phil, the co-founder of the online money transfer company PayPal. Although the meeting was not disclosed, various reports say the two discussed Korean tech giant's strategy and financial technology. Their meeting comes a week after Samsung Electronics acquired LuPay, a U.S.-based mobile payments technology startup, indicating its own ambitions in the realm of contactless payments. U.S.-based market tracker Forrester Research estimates that the global mobile payment market will grow $200 billion annually to more than $900 billion in 2017. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Tobacco companies in Korea may have to change their packaging so that their health warning messages are stronger and the pictures more graphic. The idea won a go-ahead from the Health Committee at the National Assembly today and will go before a full session set for next month. Our Son Jung-in has more on the anti-smoking images.
Anti-smoking messages cover just 30% of cigarette packs sold in Korea and are only written warnings which are easy to ignore. In line with the government's tougher policy on smoking, the National Assembly's Health and Welfare Committee voted for passage of a revised law that forces cigarette companies to use pictures showing the harmful effects of the habit and written warnings that together should cover more than 50% of the packaging. The law also seeks to penalize tobacco firms found to be breaking the rules. They would face monetary fines of up to $9,000, be banned from doing business, or put company officials behind bars for up to a year. The revised law will become final if it gains the approval of the full parliament in a session scheduled for March 3rd. The revision is in accordance with the recommended standard for cigarette graphic warnings issued by the World Health Organization. As of last July, 179 countries had adopted the measure, with Korea being one of them, but the rules have yet to be put in place. If the law is passed in Korea, the visual warning system will become mandatory after a grace period of 18 months. Officials in favor of the move say such warnings are one of the most effective anti-smoking measures across the world. Brazil, for instance, saw its smoking rate plunge by 10 percentage points to 22% 1 year after the law was implemented. According to data by the OECD in 2014, the smoking rate for Korean men was 38%, the second highest in the world after Greece. Earlier this year, the Korean government raised cigarette prices by about $2 a pack in a bid to reduce the smoking rate. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Today was the second day of a three-day parliamentary interpellation. The lawmakers threw many questions at the newly appointed prime minister and government officials on the topic of economy.
The list of concerns range from household debt to economic reforms to welfare program funding. For the latest, here's our Park Ji-won.
Lawmakers fired questions at government officials on the administration's economic plans for tackling pressing issues, such as skyrocketing household debt, deepening income polarization, and stagnant economic growth. In the hot seat was the new Prime Minister Lee Wan-gu and 8 others, including the nation's finance, trade, and science ministers.
Korea's household debt currently stands at some $993 billion. Consumption has been frozen and income levels haven't increased. Households are facing the burden of higher living expenses, while companies have stopped investing. The economy has stopped its virtuous cycle of growth.
For the past 2 years, the Park Geun-hye administration has attempted to strengthen the economy and will keep pushing the necessary reforms forward. I expect we'll have visible results soon.
Economists say they agree with the government's strategy of focusing on reforms to revive the economy, but say the timing was a little late.
The administration should have focused on reforms from the very start of its term because reforms can bear fruit in the long term. As the administration now has a low approval rating, it could face obstacles to its reforms.
The government deficit and the administration's pledge to expand welfare without raising taxes were other issues criticized at the assembly. The session will continue until Friday, and the last day's focus will be on social and cultural issues. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Continuing our three-part series on what's ahead for President Park's third year in office, today we're going to focus on the economy.
Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye takes a look at the Park Geun-hye administration's economic successes so far and the challenges ahead.
In her first 2 years in office, President Park Geun-hye put much emphasis on revitalizing the flagging domestic economy. As a result, Korea managed to keep up with the growth pace of the world economy while the employment rate reached 65% for the first time last year. The government's strong drive to boost the housing market also led to the number of home transactions to top 1 million in 2014, the largest in 8 years. Despite the improving economic figures, many are not feeling the difference. A recent survey shows that more than 9 out of 10 Koreans say the domestic economy has fallen into a state of depression. It's not surprising, says Shin Min-young from LG Economic Research Institute.
The structural problems that the economy is facing, like growing household debt and sluggish corporate investment, make it harder for ordinary people to feel the benefits of government stimulus measures that have a temporary impact on the economy.
The government has pledged to carry out structural reforms this year, focusing on the labor, education, financial, and public sectors. It's a welcomed move, but experts say some sectors need more attention.
The most important thing to achieve long-term growth is reforming the public sector. To be specific, reforms in the public servants' pension program should take place early this year so that it won't hurt the country's fiscal health.
They add that it's also critical to resolve the divide between regular and non-regular workers in order to increase flexibility in the labor market. And to push through such structural reforms this year, experts say that the government should ensure the related parties have a full understanding of their importance. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is set to make a trip to the Middle East next week, and when she goes, she will be accompanied by the biggest business delegation so far.
Korea's Trade Ministry says 116 business people and representatives of economic organizations will visit Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar. Construction affiliates of large conglomerates like Samsung, Hyundai, and GS will seek to win business opportunities in mega projects like the 2022 Qatar World Cup and Dubai Expo, while smaller companies will seek to enter the finance, medical, and IT sectors in tandem with other businesses in the region that are expanding outside the oil industry. And staying with the president, the leaders of Korea and the Czech Republic held summit talks in Seoul on Thursday, where they elevated their relationship to a strategic partnership.
And this comes in celebration of the 25th anniversary of Seoul and Prague's diplomatic ties. Our Chery reports on how the two plan to help each other in the future.
The Czech Republic is now Korea's 20th strategic partner, a sign that over the past 25 years, the two sides have recognized the rising importance of their political and economic cooperation and that their people have a lot in common. On Thursday, Korea and the East Central European nations signed 3 deals to reflect their strengthened partnership, agreeing to periodically hold talks between their foreign ministries and to better cooperate on defense and security. Seoul and Prague will work together in the areas of railway and highway construction, which will in effect help Korean firms expand their business in Europe. There will also be more exchanges of dialogue, data, and people in the areas of cybersecurity, trade and investment, nuclear energy, culture, and education. According to data by the Korean government, trade volume between the two countries reached $2.4 billion last year, and Korean firms invested an accumulated $1.5 billion until the end of 2013. The Czech Prime Minister, who arrived with a large business delegation, promoted the soundness of the Czech economy and its favorable business environment. President Bak, one of whose diplomatic goals is to promote and secure external support for North Korea and unification policies, certainly brought the matter to the table. Referring to how the Czech Republic witnessed that reforms and opening up its market were the only ways to rebuild the economy and improve quality of life, she said the Czech case could send a clear message to North Korea to choose the right path to change. The Czech Prime Minister then officially invited President Bak to visit Prague in the near future to carry on the momentum for bolstering their cooperation set by his visit. 최유선, Arirang News.
Three men have been arrested in the U.S. on charges of conspiring to support and eventually join the militant group calling itself Islamic State.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, one of these suspects was apprehended as he was about to board a plane to join IS. What other information do we have on this group?
Well, all 3 lived in New York, the youngest in the group, just 19 years old. They're going to see their first day in court on Wednesday after what appears to be a months-long probe by the FBI. They allegedly planned attacks on American soil, with at least one of the suspects saying he'd be willing to kill the U.S. president if asked. Our Kim Min-ji reports.
3 men from Brooklyn have been arrested and charged with conspiring to support the Islamic State group. Authorities said Akbar Saeed Akhmetov was arrested as he was getting ready to board a flight to Turkey from John F. Kennedy International Airport, planning to go to Syria early Wednesday. The second man, Abdurasul Jurabov, was scheduled to follow him next month. The third suspect, Abror Habibov, who is the oldest of the 3, is believed to have helped finance their travels.
So the initial actions were effectively to go to Syria and attempt to join ISIL in Syria.
The 2 younger suspects appeared in court in New York on Wednesday, while the third faced a judge in Florida. They came to the attention of federal agents in recent months after one of them posted messages on an Uzbek language website expressing support for the extremist group. A criminal complaint showed that he also offered to kill the U.S. president if ordered to do so, as well as carry out attacks in the U.S. if he was unable to go to Syria. He repeated those very sentiments when federal agents interviewed him at his home in August last year. If convicted, each face a maximum sentence of 15 years behind bars. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And shifting to Africa, police in Nigeria say an American missionary has been kidnapped by a group of armed men. The abduction took place in the central state of Kogi at a school where she had been working at for the last 6 years. A fellow teacher said he saw Reverend Phyllis Sorter being dragged away after hearing a gunshot. The police commissioner of Kogi State said that progress was being made to secure her release.
And I can assure you that we will get results. Even yesterday, maybe we had the governor, His Excellency, Idris Wadas, summoned all the security chiefs to his office and gave us a marching order that we must do everything possible to to secure the release of the Reverend.
The U.S. State Department said it heard the reports but could not make further comments in the interest of privacy. Nigeria is known to be one of the world's worst countries for kidnapping, described as a major criminal enterprise that makes millions of dollars a year. And turning to Japan, the Tokyo Electric Power Company is under heavy fire for staying silent over a radioactive leak at the crippled Fukushima power plant. On Tuesday, the state-run utility admitted that it learned rainwater contaminated with cesium and other radioactive material from the stricken plant had been flowing into the Pacific Ocean as early as last May. Officials say they had failed to disclose the information since it found no evidence that the tainted water posed an environmental threat, that's based on their own testing. Fishermen in the Fukushima prefecture say they're absolutely shocked over the alleged cover-up. And finally, the British international bank Standard Chartered has announced a comprehensive shake-up to its board of directors. This as it struggles to recover from a series of financial scandals and weak earnings. In a statement released on Wednesday, the bank said its current chief executive, Peter Sands, will be stepping down later in June. The move comes after Standard Chartered said it was cutting 2,000 jobs around the world. They added that the former top executive at J.P. Morgan, Bill Winters, will be taking over as group CEO. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief. Now the Honda LPGA Thailand teed off, and although world number one Lydia Ko sat out, there wasn't a shortage of teenage stars, with Kim Hyo-joo making her season debut. The 19-year-old, coming off a big year that included a major trophy at Evian, showed some rust with 3 early bogeys. But the rookie shook it off with a big drive on the 15th hole to set up an eagle and ended the round at even par. But she'll need a big round on Friday to catch up to Stacey Lewis, Brittany Lang, and Yani Tseng, who share the lead at 6 under par. Now to the KBL. For Thursday's doubleheader, the first game takes us to the hard court in Wonju. Now the clash of the two best teams of the second half, the Dongbu Promi and LG Sakers, was a close one until LG blew up in the third quarter. Sakers big men Davon Jefferson and Kim Jong-gyu were clutch, combining for 54 points and carrying LG to their 4th win in a row. Meanwhile, the KCC Aegis eked out the win over the ET Land Elephants as both teams scrambled up to the final seconds. While ET Land's mistakes doomed their chance late in the match, Sims and Ha were big factors in KCC's first win in 11 games. Over to pro volleyball, the ladies kicked off the action with 2 matches in Suwon. The Hyundai ENC Hill State held off the charging Hunguk Life Pink Spiders in 2 key sets, 1 and 3 that went down to the wire. Rahimova and Yang were the engines that drove the attack for Hyundai, who snapped a 2-game skid. And to the men, the Kepco Vic Storm beat the Korean Air Jumbos in 4 sets with a display of intensity that permeated every play. Mitar Juric was masterful on both ends, with help by Ha Kyung-min and Chung Kwang-in in their team's 3rd straight victory over Korean Air. And that's all I have for sports. Your weather's up next. Good night.
Good evening, I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. The weather has been erratic these days, and tomorrow looks to be no exception. Cold air is set to move in from the north, leading to a plunge in numbers. So morning lows tomorrow here in the capital will dip to -6, which is about 8 degrees lower compared to today. And earlier it was cloudy skies with flurries falling in some places, but conditions quickly cleared up by the afternoon. Bundle up for your morning commute, as wind chills will make conditions feel much colder than the actual readings. And as As for the yellow dust, it has completely moved out now, and the air quality is back to normal levels nationwide. Looking ahead, the mercury will bounce back for the weekend with a possibility of showers for Jeju on late Saturday before spreading to most parts of the country by Sunday morning. On to Friday's readings. The daytime high here in the capital hits 3, Daegu and Gwangju 5, Busan reaches 7. Meanwhile, Jeju reaches a high of 5, Dokdo hits 2, Mount Kumgang -5. Those are the updates I have for Korea, and here's a look at the international weather.
And that's primetime news for this Thursday. I'm Kang Chery. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Sean Lim. Have a great evening. We'll see you soon.